Good afternoon, everyone. We've got some people still filing into the webinar, but I think I've got 1 o'clock Central Time here, so we're going to go ahead and get started now. I'm going to hand things over to my colleague, Michael Eisman, to get started. I'll be joining you in the back half of the presentation, so thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, today we're going to be discussing the Overton Organic Farm in Nebraska, and if you proceed forward here, there's a few disclaimers that this is not investment advice. This is strictly educational, and that all investments do contain levels of risk. We'll do a quick introduction of ourselves here and of AcreTrader and kind of farmland as an asset class before diving into the specifics of this farm. My name is Michael Eisman. I lead our investor relations efforts here, educating people on farmland and how to use the AcreTrader platform. My background is more in early stage businesses and entrepreneurship, helping early stage ventures connect with capital and also establish product market fit. I spent about 4 years at a company doing that here in Northwest Arkansas before meeting and joining the team here at AcreTrader, and seeing the team and this opportunity is really what had me so excited. I've been with the team for about 2 years now and really enjoy this. It's the most exciting thing I've worked on in my career.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. My name is Ben Maddox. I'm the Director of Farm Operations here. You probably heard me on previous webinars if you've joined us before. I head up all the underwriting and due diligence on our acquisitions here, as well as working with the team to manage all the properties on the AcreTrader platform. I actually have a background in international agriculture, and I also got my MBA at the University of Arkansas here in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So like Michael, I've been with the company for a few years now, and happy to be here today. And like I mentioned earlier, I will join you all in the second half of today's broadcast.
All right, thanks, Ben. So as a quick reminder of what we do here, AcreTrader was created to connect investors with farmland and provide farmers with new financing options to grow their operation. And if we proceed to the next slide here, if you're still wondering why farmland, it truly has been an incredible asset class. And this positions farmland. So on the y-axis here, you can see the average annual growth rate. This would be the returns over time for farmland. And this farm today, and most farms, that the return is structured twofold. There's the annual yield from usually a rent that a farmer would pay, and then the second aspect is the appreciation of the farm, and that would be paid out after the farm is sold down the road. The x-axis here is on volatility, and volatility would be just variations in the returns over time. And farmland has been both high performing and low volatility over time, and this is over the last 30 years here. But farmland has been a pretty difficult asset class to invest in. Part of it is it's difficult to manage, especially if you're not in that local community. It's hard to diversify within farmland because even if you're buying whole farms, you can have a lot of concentration in 1 or 2 different parcels. And then limited optionality is the last aspect. Deal flow is really difficult. Many transactions happen off market or in these local communities. And so if you don't have your thumb on the pulse of the deal flow in that local community, then it would be really difficult to even have access to many farms because they are sold before they hit the market. And so that's why AcreTrader was created. Our solution is to make this much more simple for investors. So AcreTrader has a team here that's identifying parcels of land to acquire. We create a unique entity for each offering, typically an LLC, and that LLC will own the farm outright. We'll then handle all of the management to make it a passive investment with regular distributions, and then eventually, once the farm is sold, that's when you have your appreciation and initial investment returned. We won't dive into all of the value considerations that go into every single farm, but this slide is just meant to model that there's over 100 different things that we're looking at prior to bringing a farm to the platform, and not all farms are created equal. So as a high level on what we're looking for, you want farms with a strong soil makeup, with a strong yield history, with a good water situation. Water is going to be pretty different depending on where you are in the country. In some areas, you're looking for water rights, like in California. Some areas you need irrigation, in others you need drainage if there's too much water. But having the appropriate water situation is very important. And then we're looking at the financial profile. As I mentioned earlier, that's primarily the opportunity for appreciation and those yields from the rent that would come out. And then zooming out, we're looking at the farm community as well. And so before we go into the specifics of this farm in Nebraska, we mentioned earlier on a slide that there's 900 million acres of farmland in the United States. About 300 million of that is in row crops or in cropland. The rest would be in usually grazing or pasture land for livestock. Of that 300 million acres of cropland, 230 million is concentrated in these 6 crops that you can see on the slide here. Over 80% of that would be in wheat, corn, and soybeans. And we bring this up for a couple of reasons. One is you can still have a pretty diversified portfolio by staying in these main commodities, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It would be like saying that multifamily housing is concentrated in apartment buildings. It just is the majority of the asset class. A couple other considerations here is that the reason that it's concentrated here is it's simply the most profitable for the farmer to grow. All of these fields are on some sort of crop rotation plan usually, and so if it was more profitable for the farmers to grow other types of crops, then over time we would see that shift. And then on the final slide here that I want to touch on is the farmland is also geographically concentrated. So these top 15 states here comprise 67% of U.S. crop production in the United States, and this is by gross sales. And it's concentrated in 3 main areas. There's the Corn Belt or the Midwest, where this farm is located, the Southeast or the Mississippi Delta, where there's a lot of rice production and other crops, and then out on the West Coast, California, particularly, there's a lot of both vegetable and orchard production as well. And today's farm is in Nebraska, which you see high on this list here. And I will turn it over to Ben Maddox to discuss the details of today's offering.
Thank you, Michael. Today we're talking about the Overton Organic Farm. You have some photos here. These are from about 2 weeks ago. We do a ground inspection of all the farms that we purchase. And the reason we do that, other than the obvious ones, is that we're looking for things that might not show up in the desk underwriting process. So you can certainly tell a lot about a farm by analyzing soil maps, water records, equipment records, but there's some things that you just can't replace for on the ground and experienced oversight on a property. So this is something that we really highlight. We want to be out on all the properties that we are purchasing into the AcreTrader portfolio. And so these photos were just recently taken. Obviously, it is still early spring and the new crop has not been planted yet. So looking at a regional view here, obviously we're in south central Nebraska. You can see the sort of outline or contours of the Platte River there as it arcs southward through the lower part of the state. And in a little more detail here, the property is in 3 parcels, as you'll see on this view, just adjacent to the Platte River. Here we have the executive summary. I've highlighted Interstate 80, which some of you may be more familiar with than others, as well as the river. So you can see it's approximately 3/4 of a mile to the river from the farm, and then adjacent immediately to the interstate. So today's farm, it is a 429-acre certified organic farm in Dawson County, Nebraska. This is a sale leaseback property. It has a 5-year lease in place with Grandstrom Farms. You can get a link to their website actually in the investment description. The preview farm is actually up on our website right now, so you can go take a look at that. And this farm does have irrigation across all 3 parcels. So it is provided via center pivot irrigation. Each parcel has its own well, and we'll have the well records later on in the presentation additionally. So you can see the gross capitalization rate here of 3.7%, as well as the annual rent and the gross acre cost. Getting into the investment highlights here. So first and foremost, this is a certified organic farm. So why is this unique? Organic farms are not sold publicly very often. Many organic opportunities you'll see, in particular on our platform, are what's called transitional opportunities. So that means, you still have 36 months of transitioning a property from conventional production to organic production. This farm, you have the opportunity to buy into an existing organic farm, and there's no wait period involved. Secondly, I mentioned Grandstrom Farms. That is the sale leaseback partner here. They've been in business for over 100 years and farm thousands of acres organically in the immediate area. We have this information in more detail later on about water, but average depth of groundwater across the farms is around 10 feet. All the wells have been updated and the center pivots were installed in 2018. An average life of center pivot machine, if well maintained, is anywhere from 15 to 20 years or longer. The fourth item on our list that's sort of a highlight here, we have sandier soils on this property, which you might expect given that it's in sort of a river basin there from the Platte River. And that's really suitable for higher amounts of tillage, which is a critical process in organic farming. You're going to do a lot more tillage in an organic farm operation than you are chemical sprays to control weeds. And finally, this is a core farming region. Nebraska is the nation's leader in organic corn production. There are over 20 certified organic grain producers in a 4-county area surrounding this property. So there's certainly a lot of farmers doing this in the immediate vicinity of today's farm. Wanted to take a moment to focus on the organic aspect of this property. So there's a lot of conversation about what sustainable investing looks like in farmland, and I think it's important to ask a lot of questions when you hear that. There's no perfect standard for what sustainability means. There's a lot of lenses to consider the issue through: environmental, economic, hydrological. At AcreTrader, one of the things you'll see us use most frequently is that USDA certified organic standard. That's largely because it's a defined and governed set of rules that everyone plays by. We can really point to and say what it means when we're talking about it. And to date, around 25% of AcreTrader's offerings have been either organic farms or farms transitioning to organic production. So it's been a real focus of what we've done here to date. As I mentioned, Nebraska is the nation's leader in organic grain corn production here on the slide. And as you might infer as well, when comparing organic prices to normal prices just in the grocery store, there is a real premium for organic foods. Organic corn is no different. You can see a 4-year comparison done by the University of Illinois here on the slide, both the revenue, expense, and net return figures for conventional corn versus organic corn. Getting into the individual tract analyses. So the soils on all 3 tracts are very similar. They're predominantly Gosper loams. It's a silt loam variety. This soil is an alluvial soil that you'll often find along river bottoms. It has a higher sand content, as I mentioned, than you'll find, miles north or south of the Platte River. And this is advantageous for organic farming, again, because of weed control. So on a conventional farm, you control weeds mainly with going out and spraying chemicals. With conventional or with organic farming, you're typically going to do that with tillage. So going repeatedly back across the field, working it up, reducing weed pressure. Why that's important with this particular soil type, if you use high tillage practices on clay soils or heavier soils, you run a greater risk of developing a significant hard pan, which makes a farm less productive, makes it harder to grow crops, reduces overall productivity of the property. So in this case, having a sandier soil profile makes organic weed control easier. On tracks 2 and 3, again, very similar soils. The farmer we're working with has a number of conservation practices that they emphasize. One is that tillage weed control method. The second would be heavy applications of natural manures. So again, these are just coming from livestock rather than synthetic nitrogen sources. And finally, heavy applications of compost. The farm today also, or the farmer I should mention, also has a goal of increasing the soil organic matter content by 0.5% annually. That's a pretty impressive and ambitious goal. Most average organic matter in farms you're going to see in this part of the world are probably in the somewhere in the 3 to 4% range. So adding 0.5% annually when it's able to be achieved is quite an accomplishment. And as always, we want to talk about water. So this is an important issue now and will be even more so in the future. You should always ask questions about water resources when considering any farm investment. We're very careful about investing in the Plains states for 2 water-related reasons. Number 1, average rainfall drops precipitously from around 40 inches annually to about 20 inches or less annually over just the span of a few hundred miles as you move west. Number two, to make up for that lower rainfall, you need to irrigate. And a lot of farms in this area are relying on the Ogallala Aquifer for groundwater irrigation. You can see on this map here actually a map of the Ogallala Aquifer, which shows decreases or increases in water levels over time. And that's sort of why we have taken this issue so seriously. There are areas of the aquifer suffering from significant decreases in groundwater that will reduce the value of those farms in those areas over time. The farm today, which is highlighted on the map here, is in one of the few areas of significant increases in groundwater supply over time. You can see the key at the bottom right of the slide. We're a few hundred feet from the Platte River. The static water levels in our well observations are around 10 feet below the surface. And actually in 2019, we had too much water on this property. So there was actually an insurance claim because they had to plant so late in 2019 because there's too much water. So, this is something we take a great deal of time in researching, and we feel confident about this investment from a water perspective. This is the regional view. Moving into the sort of local view or the irrigation details, this is more about how you get the water to the crops, less about where the water comes from. So you can see each of the tracks here has its well permit identification number here. You can see that each of them has a 2018 Rinke center pivot irrigation tower. And you can see the gallons per minute and the static water level for each of those wells on each of the three parcels. We want to look at not only static water level, which is just a simple, how deep down do you have to go to hit groundwater? But we also want to look at the sort of velocity or volume of water coming out of the ground. You can see 900 gallons per minute, 1,000 gallons per minute, and 850 gallons per minute. A healthy corn crop in Dawson County, Nebraska, on farms of this size, you probably want 600 to 700 gallons per minute. So it definitely checks that box for us on the irrigation details slide. So finally, getting into the financial overview, again, you see the gross cap rate as well as the net return. The minimum investment tomorrow is $27,440. That'll equate to 35 shares when you're completing the investment. Michael's actually going to have a little bit of information about that here at the end of the presentation. Before we get to Michael's last slide, just coming back to the investment highlights again, sort of going over what we've just sort of synthesized on the previous slides. There's a number of reasons that this farm is, different than ones we've done in the past. I think the certified organic element to it, as well as the Nebraska element, both of those are relatively new to the platform for this part of the United States. Michael?
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, I'll let you pull up the questions here, and we'll dive into the questions for the final 10 minutes here. But there's often inquiries about the investment process on AcreTrader, so I just wanted to highlight that for a moment here. As Ben mentioned previously, the preview farm is already available on AcreTrader's website, so you can see the details for the farm. Really, the only thing that will change tomorrow whenever the farm goes live is there's a button that says Notify Me, and that Notify Me button will change to Invest Now. If you select that and start the investment process, should you choose to participate in this farm, it will prompt you to invest, how many shares or how many units would you like to participate, and then it defaults to an individual account, and so you can own these shares or hold the shares as an individual. But if you would like to invest as an entity, so a corporation, LLC, if you have a self-directed IRA, you can actually set up an entity profile within your user dashboard and have that verified ahead of time and hold the shares with that, and that will just populate an investment agreement accordingly with, on whatever signature page for the entity that you selected. After you sign the investment agreement, you're prompted with a couple of different funding options. Importantly, you do not need to have funds loaded in your wallet ahead of time. You can and invest out of them, but the wallet is most utilized for making distributions and sending them back to you. That's why we would prefer that people link a bank account and establish the wallet there. But you are able to invest with a one-time ACH transfer and just add in the routing and account number from the bank that you would like to send the funds from, or you can select wire transfer and initiate the wire transfer on your end. If you do select wire transfer, we would ask that you initiate that in a timely manner in the 1 or 2 days after the offering. The bank transfer or the ACH, those are initiated and pulled automatically in the day or days following the investment after it's confirmed. And the final step here, this is just the last step of the investment process. Based on the way that AcreTrader and our offerings are regulated, we have to verify that investors are accredited, and there's a number of different ways to be accredited, primarily a net worth of over $1 million, not including your primary residence, or income over 200,000 for the last 2 years. So you can verify that through, like I mentioned, a number of different ways. If you just have documentation on hand and upload that during the investment process, you're prompted to upload an image or PDF, then that should suffice. The accreditation windows here, if you do upload that, we can leave you as accredited for a number of days as well, so you don't have to to upload this every single time that you're investing, if you are participating in multiple offerings. So just a quick snapshot of what the investment process looks like. We're happy to answer any specific questions, and Ben, we can turn our videos on here, or our cameras on, and I'll let you take the first couple questions.
Yeah, sure. There's two questions here that I'll get started with. I want to say one thing, that this is being recorded. It'll be available on the Preview Farms webpage on acretrader.com probably in a few hours by the early afternoon. And number two, if we don't get to your question during the Q&A session, we usually get far more inquiries that we can answer in the 10 to 15 minutes allotted. We will answer those either by email or phone today. So again, apologies in advance if we don't make it to your question. We will respond to everyone by the end of the day. So let me get set up here. So the two questions that I was going to address off the bat, the first question is, what is the sale leaseback? Which is a good question. It simply means that the person who is selling the farm is interested in remaining on the farm and will continue to rent that property going forward. So yes, there is a 5-year lease agreement already in place with the seller of the property. Again, that's Grandstrom Farms. You can see a link to their property or to their farm website in the description for this investment. And there was another question here about, does being certified organic increase the rental income in any way versus it, not being organic? And that's sort of a controversial topic with a lot of debate. I think if you look out there, you can find some studies that find that there is a slight premium for certified organic acres on a rental basis over conventional acres. But one of the things we do here at AcreTrader is when we're investing in organic operations, we do our best to underwrite it at an income level that could easily be sort of replicated if we were forced to go out and lease this property to a conventional farmer. So, if something happened, the farm can no longer be certified organic, and we need to find somebody who could pay to lease the property and farm it conventionally, we want to make sure that the investment still works at that income level. So we're always sort of erring on the side of being conservative. And, I think the rental rate used in this investment, the income projected in this investment reflects that.
And on that topic of rent and rental rates here, there's a question on the insurance claim that affected rent. Ben mentioned a prevented planting or insurance payout in 2019 due to excessive rainfall, and that was a year of record rainfall in that area. The way that this lease and most leases are structured, it's just a cash rent agreement. And so if the farmer is going to be paying $300 per acre, whether it's a bumper crop year or if they're collecting an insurance payment, it's a cash rent agreement, and that's what those insurance payments are there for. If a farmer does have a difficult year, then the insurance will make them whole, and most of those are federally subsidized as well. And part of our agreement with any tenant farmer would be that they carry that crop insurance.
There's a question here, is the lease a flat $300 for all 5 years? The answer is no. There is a slight sort of inflation escalator built in. I think it's about 2% annually. So that rent will go up by 2% on an annual basis, really just to keep up with inflation. So.
There's a secondary market question here. And so the exit scenario that we anticipate for each one of these would be a sale of the actual property when all investors are paid out. That's a material part of these returns would be the appreciations. We do encourage you to think about this as a long-term investment. You are able to sell shares after holding them for 1 year. There's a regulatory 12-month holding period, but after that point, you can sell them to either another investor that you know or to someone else through the platform. And to make this an easier transaction, we are pursuing a secondary market to make it easier to buy and sell shares on the AcreTrader platform as well.
There's a really good question here about, is there a cost paid to the government to use the water that you're pumping from the ground? And the answer to that is, in this case, no. You will see that in some places. Typically, that's going to be maybe more for surface water allocations that you would pay for. We don't have any of those in this case, but on this farm, the groundwater, really the only expense is the electricity, because these are electric pumps, electricity used to pull the groundwater up and then irrigate the field with.
We have a question about the estimated yield and what that's inclusive of. If you see a net yield, that would be net of fees. I'd encourage you, on the offering page, there's a financials tab, and that gives a full breakdown of both the use of funds, what we're using these, the funds that we're raising for, and the cost of the farmland, as well as a pro forma income statement. And you can see what the gross rent would be, what the estimated property taxes are, and then what the net yield estimates are. And yeah, so that's on the financials page of the offering that is already up on the website right now.
Question, I'll take two here in a row, Michael. There's a question about, is this located in a flood zone per the FEMA maps, Federal Emergency Management Agency? The answer is no, is not located in a FEMA flood zone. The second question here is, any equipment or improvements for depreciation? Good question. Farms have a lot of opportunities for depreciation. Obviously not the land itself, you can't depreciate land, but some of the fixtures, such as the center pivot irrigation systems, some of the pumps and well infrastructure, that can all be depreciated and will be in this case.
Ben, do you want to talk on the soil ratings here, the way sandier soil can impact that as well? I think that that's a good question that some people will have, and how it could actually be a benefit for this farm.
I don't see that question.
I guess how you would think of soil ratings for this farm versus others.
Sure. Okay. I guess maybe the question is alluding to, if you go to the preview farm, there's a couple documents in there, the subscription agreement and the LLC agreement and some of the formation documents. You'll also find the soil map that we have on all the properties that we put up. And what you'll see is that soil map, it just automatically generates what's called an NCCPI rating. So this is sort of a national soil rating system. To be frank, not many people use it. It is basically used to measure the inherent productive capacity of a particular soil, assuming no improvements, assuming no irrigation, and assuming some much older technologies and methodologies of planting and harvesting. So essentially what that NCCPI rating is measuring is what is the organic content and inherent productivity of unimproved ground. Now, any soil that is sandier in nature is going to have a lower score on this. So take, for example, some of the apple investments that we've had out in Washington State in the Columbia River Basin. Those are pretty sandy soils, and they have very low NCCPI ratings, yet they're able to produce perfectly healthy organic apple crop. So what this tells us is that the NCCPI rating, again, is trying to measure the amount of sort of organic matter, inherent productivity of the soil. It's not accounting for the practices that might be applied to that soil. So in this case, you're actually going in and adding the fertility that might be missing in a sandier soil. So we're adding mainly poultry manure and bovine manure to the property to increase that nitrogen and organic matter that, again, would be missing because it's a sandier soil. So yes, the rating is there. It's maybe a little bit lower than you would see in like Iowa, for example, but that's all because it is sandier in content, and it simply means that you need to go in and amend the soil and use certain practices that are more appropriate to this particular region.
Thanks, Ben. I know we are at the 30-minute mark here, and so I think we can stop there with just a reminder that the farm will go live at 1 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. You can sign up for a text alert if you want to a reminder on that offering page. We'll follow up with as many of these questions in a timely manner as we can, and try to get to these today. And a recording of this will be up on the farm offering page before the end of the day as well. But thank you all for attending today. And I guess, yeah, we'll be following up quickly with answers to any of these questions we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, and there's quite a few of you we can see. So we'll be following up with you here shortly.
All right, thanks, Ben.